Okay, so since you brought up CEH, that brings me to my third question involving this transaction of Bell to the Chiefs. What is the fantasy football impact on CEH? Now, Cougs answered that a little bit when he mentioned that he didn't think CEH had anything to worry about when it came to Bell joining an Andy Reid offense where we've praised running backs under Andy Reid for years now. Now, if you look at CEH's numbers, he's had 4 of 5 games over 80 total yards. 2 of 5, he's gone over 100. Kansas City is third in the NFL with 407 offensive yards per game before the Week 6 Monday night game. With CEH and Bell both in the backfield now, granted, it's going to take Bell a week or two to get acclimated to the offense. He's going to work his way in. CEH will have the lion's share for sure while Bell discovers the offense and gets comfortable with Andy Reid. But after we have both backs acclimated the offense and in the offense and running a high percentage of snaps, where do you see CEH in fantasy football?
Well, for starters, Andy Reid is probably like an Andy Reid in a candy shop right now. Because
or a burger joint.
Right. He's got a new toy to play with now. That offense was already loaded. It just got more loaded. If Le'Veon is 50% of the guy that he used to be. So I'm still defending my first point, but Andy Reid's going to have a blast with this offense. I think if you are a CEH owner, as I am, I don't think, like you said, for the next few weeks, I don't think it's going to impact. But if they remain on the winning side of things, and if they continue to win games the way that they are, I think where Le'Veon is going to spoil CEH's fantasy value is that playoff push towards the end of the season where you start to see the starters get reeled in a little bit, giving these guys spells. If they clinch a spot, I think that we're looking at a lot more of Le'Veon come time for the playoffs or for the fantasy playoffs.
On the flip side of that, couldn't you say that CEH has the fresher legs being a rookie, so they'll lean on him down the stretch to keep Le'Veon fresh for the playoffs?
It could go either way. And that's my honest answer. I know that's like the worst answer, but I really think it could go either way because they could be looking at the long-term value of CEH and really utilizing, having a back like that for your young rookie to get spells from is pretty amazing. Or, like you said, other way, let's let the fresh legs run wild, but do you gas them before the big game? So it depends on who they favor. So, my opinion is that it's CEH's backfield and Le'Veon's lucky to be there. But if I'm wrong, then it's pretty clear who's.
It's going to hurt some of your fantasy. It's going
to really, the losers are going to be CEH owners. If I'm wrong,
as a fantasy owner that was so high on CEH, even taking him in one of my first rounds of my redraft league, it worries me that Bell is now in the same backfield, being someone that avoided Bell at all costs while he was with the Jets. So I have no shares of Bell. I have 3 or 4 shares of CEH, none of which are in Dynasty. So it worries me that Bell is going to this Kansas City backfield. Paul, what do you think the impact is on CEH?
I don't think that the answer to this question is really that cut and dry because I think that it's in an offense that's so dynamic. They can put Bell anywhere. And they could run CEH between the 20s and then put Bell in to get the goal line work, the red zone work, things like that. They could use Bell as a swing back. They could use him as a third down guy.
Le'Veon
just a pass catcher. Or they could spread Bell out on plays.
Yeah.
This could be taking opportunities away from Sammy Watkins and McCole Hardman too.
Right, because I was just going to point out to just chip in here, Le'Veon in his prime, if any of that is a possibility, he could do
machine.
He could do everything. He could catch.
What's
everything.
The one thing that CEH has not done this season?
Scoring inside the 5.
He's got 1 touchdown on the year.
And we saw in the opening weekend when it was the Thursday night game, so the fantasy football overreactions are going to be coming strong. Everyone's like, oh, David Johnson's back, and CEH can't score when Houston was playing Kansas City in that opening Thursday night game. One of the biggest overreactions was that CEH can't run the ball inside the 5 because he was 0 for 4, 0 for 5.
He looked like Nick Chubb in a Freddie Kitchens offense.
He was just getting stuffed on every opportunity when he was handed the ball inside the 5-yard line there, and it took touchdowns away from fantasy owners. Fantasy owners were pissed. And while he totaled over 100 yards, I think it was 130 total yards for his rookie debut, everyone seemed to focus on the fact that he couldn't score inside the 5-yard line, which ended up being the narrative that has followed him for the first 6 weeks of his career, which is a very young stretch of his career here, but it is a narrative that has been kind of pigeonholed on CEH's value ever since. As I already mentioned, with Kansas City being third in the NFL with over 400 yards per game, there's enough yards in this offense to support 2 productive running backs. But for those of you that, including myself, for those of us that took CEH in the first or early second round, I think that the RB1 upside of CEH has been capped, has been dampened. His ceiling is nowhere near as high as we thought it was going to be on draft day. And that's an obvious observation. Everyone that plays fantasy football, rookie, pro, whether you're in your first year or your 12th year of playing, it's common sense that if another running back with Le'Veon Bell's caliber and name comes into the fold, they're going to at least split time, which obviously caps both of their upsides. But we've seen backfields like New Orleans with Murray and Kamara. We've seen Cleveland with Chubb and Hunt. Through the first 4 weeks of the season, Chubb and Hunt were both top 10 backs in PPR leagues. We've seen Baltimore with Ingram, Edwards, Dobbins, and yes, Lamar Jackson sharing all of those rushing yards. I think that both CEH and Le'Veon Bell can catch the ball. I can see them running a lot of 2-back sets now because after Tyreek Hill and after Travis Kelce, there's really not that many options for the best quarterback on the planet to throw to. So I think Andy Reid is going to get real creative with running 2-back sets, maybe motioning backs out of the backfield and out into the flat or out into the slot where they're going to be open, they're going to get the ball in space, and they're just going to do work. If I'm a fantasy football player that does not have any shares of CEH, I think now's the time to buy. Because right now, with Bell going to Kansas City, Bell's value is as high as it's been since the day he left Pittsburgh. But CEH is the player that everyone is kind of putting down a little bit. I still think he has RB2 upside, high RB2 upside, especially in PPR leagues where Andy Reid is going to find creative ways to get him the ball. For everyone that thinks that Le'Veon Bell is just going to step in after he learns the offense in 2 or 3 weeks and take all of the running back production from Kansas City, they're going to be disappointed because CEH was a first-round pick. Andy Reid was as excited on draft night as he was when he discovered In-N-Out Burger. Like,
Damn.
Burgers
big on the Andy Reid burger jokes.
Well, Andy Reid loves 2 things: running backs and burgers.
Cheeseburger specifically.
The first thing he said he was going to do when he won the Super Bowl was get a burger. That was it. So it's not a slight
legend.
on Andy Reid. This is not a fat joke. The man loves burgers and the man loves running backs, and now he has 2.
I relate to him
2
so
burgers
much.
or 2 running backs?
Both.
Probably both.
Probably both.
I relate to you, Andy Reid. I know you're a listener.
Andy Reid is in his running back heaven right now, having 2 backs with this kind of talent, and I don't think that he's going to ignore either of them when both of them are fully into this offense. If you're in a redraft league, go buy CEH right now because you could probably get him cheap while the Le'Veon Bell news is still fresh in everyone's minds. And if you're in a dynasty league, it's going to be harder to buy CEH because his value wasn't hit as hard. Le'Veon Bell's on a 1-year deal. Everyone's expecting CEH to take right back over in 2021. But if you have that fantasy owner that is name guy, loving Le'Veon Bell, thinks that CEH has been a disappointment up to this point in your dynasty league, in your redraft league, it doesn't matter. Sending a trade for CEH right now, a low ball offer, trying to gain yourself a very valuable RB2, isn't the worst move you can make right now as a fantasy football manager.